Today is Deacon Byron and Bora's last Sunday here, and so if you have not already done so, and if this is news to you, I pray that you will take the time after service to give them a fond farewell and to allow them to say their goodbyes to our congregation. They have been serving and been with this church for many years, and so I know that this news will come as a shock, and probably has already come as a shock to everyone. But be that as it may, our prayers are over them and for them, and may your prayers be over them and for them. For even though they are leaving from our midst and our presence, they are never far from God, and they will always be under His presence at all times, anywhere they go. Pray that they will go to a church that speaks the Word of God, and pray that they will find a community whom they will love and serve as faithfully as they have loved and served us. With that said, I have two pictures that I want to show you. One is a picture of graphite, and the other picture is a diamond, a woman's best friend. Now, both, and I'm not going to do an extensive study in science, there's not going to be a science class, but most of you should know that both of these elements, or these properties that you can see, come from the same element, which is carbon. The difference between graphite and diamond is that graphite is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It is the number 2 pencil that you used when you were younger, and some of us not so young, many years. And when you take a pencil, graphite is the element that you use to write. Diamond, not so much. It's not plentiful. If it was plentiful, well, it would not be so expensive. And as most of us know, diamonds are considered very precious stones because of its scarcity. And yet, both are carbon. The difference is, one is pressurized, the other's not. That difference in pressure is what makes a gemstone, and graphite. It's not pretty, it's gray, maybe silverish, yet it's everywhere. And people use it and find its utility not only amusing, but necessary. Diamonds, not so much. Unless you're doing industrial mechanics, you will use a diamond to cut something really, really hard. And you need a diamond cut mechanical instrument to be able to cut something, but I don't think any of us in this room, most of us in this room probably are not going to be engaged in such industrial mechanics. But all of the ladies will eventually get a diamond ring, no? At least you hope so. You hope that your fiancé, when he proposes to the woman that she loves, will give her a diamond ring. Hopefully it shines. Hopefully she says, "Oh my gosh, look how it sparkles," instead of, "What is that little thing that I cannot see?" And we all hope to be amazed by that diamond ring. But as all of us know, or at least the ladies, at least you should know, there's no function for a diamond ring other than to just show it off. There's no utility behind it except to wear it. Unless you think wearing a diamond ring is the utility, then it's a very unnecessary utility, wouldn't you say, if you're honest with yourself? So if that's where we are, shouldn't the graphite be more expensive? After all, it is the most utilitarian of all the things that we use. But it's not. That's because that's not how we market things. That's not how price is driven. Price is driven by scarcity. And since there is so much of graphite, it will always be cheap. It will look as cheap, and maybe even to our eyes, it will be looked as dirt cheap. Because after all, you can find a number 2 pencil anywhere in a grocery store. If you were to find a diamond sitting outside the parking lot or on the street, how many hundreds of people will come and find that thing that's just lying there? So it is, then, that we understand utility as something that is very, very the object of scorn, maybe even disdain, and even boring. For something that is so utilitarian has to be so boring. After all, there's so plenteous and plentiful of it. But I do ask that you think about a question as we go and take a deep dive into this passage. And that is, isn't the utility of an object dependent on the one who makes its utility function? In other words, a number 2 pencil is boring because, after all, we didn't create it, make it, fashion it. We probably were able to engineer it, but it's there, it's everywhere. But what if I said to you, you can turn this graphite into a gemstone with your bare hands? You can turn this graphite into a gemstone with your bare hands, and thereby create something that is not supposed to happen. Would you be astonished? Would you marvel? Would you say to me, hey, how do you do that? Would you like to know? Because that is exactly what Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 and 15 is talking about. Now, I want to pause because we all know this passage. We only read 2 verses, but I am positive that most of us, if not all of us, know what this passage is talking about. And this is the parable of the talents. And the reason why I pause is because I know that all of you know, or at least you think you know, what this parable is talking about. And I want to dig deep and to tell you that whatever you think about the parable of the talents, it's not what the Lord thinks, and as he's saying about the parable of the talents. Because most of us think that the parable of the talents is about talents. Both the talent in terms of money that was given, and talent in terms of the symbolic reference to talent, as in gifts and abilities. And I am telling you that it is not. We're going to take a deep dive into this passage because it's necessary. It is necessary for your understanding. And it is necessary for you to understand Jesus. Because every time he talks, it's a mystery. That's right. Every time Jesus speaks, he's not clear. Why is he not clear? He's not clear because the only people who can understand him understand who Jesus is, and wants to understand who Jesus is. After all, isn't that the same with human communication? You will not want to understand strangers when they speak to you. You'll brush them aside. You only want to understand those close to you and those you want to know. Do you want to know Jesus, or is he a stranger that you just quietly acknowledge and push aside? Because if you do want to know Jesus, this is what he says. For it will be like a man. It will be like a man. Immediately, he's talking about a story. For it will be like a man. And he's not just going to talk to you about any story. For it is a story pertaining to himself. Now, last Sunday, we did talk about gifts and abilities a little bit. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 11 says this: all these are empowered by one and the same Spirit, who apportions to each one individually as he wills. Matthew 25:15 says the same thing. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. So immediately we are sensing a connection between 1 Corinthians chapter 12:11 and Matthew 25:15. The connection is that there are talents and abilities that each of us have, and talents and abilities that are not the same. They're not the same quality or the same quantity. But it is given according to his will. That's hard. If you think that that is an easy to understand, I want you to say that very phrase to yourself. Individually as he wills. The more you say it, the more you become uncomfortable with that statement. You should be. Individually as he wills. Not as you will. Not as your husband or wife wills. Not as your mother or your father wills. But as he wills. That means there are abilities that you have that are inconsistent with what you want. Gifts and abilities that you have inconsistent with what you want to do. And gifts and abilities inconsistent to your personality, the way in which you want them to be. What is that? Well, we all want to be outgoing, compassionate, kind, loving people. And yet some of us, that's not just strange and awkward, but really hard. Did you notice that not everyone is as compassionate and loving and kind-hearted? There's a mix. Have you recognized that not all of us are socially adept? There's a level of awkwardness in the way in which some people say hello or even thank you. Why is that? Because we're all not the same person. That's why. No one thinks like you, no one talks like you, no one acts like you, and no one behaves like you. No one has the same kind of attribution of life as you, and no one has the same mind as you, cannot think like you, and doesn't process the same information the same way like you. What does that tell us about human nature? Well, 2 things that tells us about human nature. One is that we're all individuals because we're not all the same. And second about human nature is that we want to do things the way that we want to do them. It's another term for human nature. It's called sinful nature. So when Apostle Paul says individually as he wills, he's trying to prick at us. At our human nature. He's pricking at the heart. Did it work? I think it did. It's pricking at you, saying, as he wills. Oh, that makes me uncomfortable. Ouch, don't say that. You should have just erase that individually as he wills part. It's It's better. All these are empowered by one and the same Spirit who apportions to each one. Period. End of sentence. But he didn't. He wrote, as he wills, to prick at you. Prick at what? Prick at your sensitivities of your individual human nature identification. To attach you, to say yes. Look at the person sitting next to you, behind you, in front of you. You're all attached to he, to him, to the God who has given it to you. And you know what also pricks? That he apportions it. Like a pie. Big brother gets the big chunk, where little brother gets the little chunk. That's what apportionment means, doesn't it? Shouldn't you all be angry? Yes. Brace then for the shock that in Matthew 25:15, Jesus says the same thing. To each one according to his ability, then he went away. Who judged what ability they had? He did. He judged. He was the one who acknowledged this guy gets 5, this guy gets 2, and this guy got 1. He judged that. They all did not get 5, they all did not get 2, they all did not get 1. They all got different stuff. 5 talents is greater than 2 talents, which is greater than 1. But if we just look at 5, 2, and 1, it sounds like pitiful. No, it's not. For 1 talent, if it was just 1 talent, is equivalent to a year's salary. It's a lot of money. It's not as much as 5, but it is enough that if you were to just squander away 1 talent, well, that's a lot of money you just squandered away. Which tells us something about this passage. And that is, whatever he gives you is plentiful. Whatever he gives you is plentiful. Now, our eyes are always trained on the one who has more, but I want to question, what are you looking at that you think that that person has more? You're looking at the strength of the person versus the weakness of yourself that you do not have, such as social adroitness, being able to converse and being a social butterfly, moving from one group of people to another group of people as if it's just no big thing. Or having an athletic skill or ability that you can dunk. Well, most Korean men can't. And you can see that guy can dunk and you can't. Or measurables. Some guy is 6'2" and you're only 5'7". Maybe it's not athletic prowess or measurables. Maybe it's the personality. Person's just a natural when he communicates, while others are not. And yet, you did not figure into your own mind the gifts in which he has given to you that may not be as stark and in your face. Because as athletic ability and as social adroitness, as well as communication style and personality, those are things that people look at and are fascinated by. They're not looking at and are fascinated by other things that are just as important, if not more important, which is what? Hospitality and welcoming and service and doing the things that are necessary because you know that it is hard work.
endurance, and patience, and gentleness, even when people are rude and angry and just upset. Have you ever met the lady behind the counter when you're grocery shopping or when you're doing clothes shopping? Have you ever met the salesperson who is just so kind, seems so kind, and seems so natural? Yes, we met other salesperson that just seems so fake, and it sounds like a forgery, like they're practicing some words to you. But I know that we've all met one person where it sounded so natural, yet we take them for granted because they're doing us a service. What are you looking at that you're comparing others to, that you lack and others have? Jesus says this, individually as he wills, but I have given you as much as is necessary. As much as it is necessary. For what? For whose purpose? For what goal? Is it for you to earn more money? Is it for you to gain more status for yourself? Is it for you so that you can pat yourself on the back and say, well done, you are a great human being? 1 Corinthians chapter 12:7 says this, each has been given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. For the common good. For your welfare? For your common good? Are you the common good he's talking about? No, the common good is the vernacular. The people who are lower than you is the common good. Literally, this means status-wise seen as lower. Common is where we get the word vernacular. And common here doesn't mean common as in what is common, medium or neutral. That common is not very common. Matter of fact, that common is not very nice. It is what we would call dirt. Who we see as dirt, status-wise, who we view as lower than ourselves. Those are the common good. Notice he's not talking about those who are above you, as if you're beneath them. Because Apostle Paul is communicating something more drastic and even mind-boggling. To say that each and every person in this room, no matter your social status, no matter your well-being, no matter how much money you make, every single one of us believe we're better than we are. And we stand hand and shoulders above anyone in the room, no matter where we are. Is this not true? I would say, heck yeah, it's true. Any situation we think we are better, and we stand head and shoulders above anyone. We can call that pride or hubris, but that's just human nature. It is. It's common to human nature, which means not only you, but me. I have it. You have it. If I have it, you sure as heck have it. Walk around with our chest like this? No, maybe we don't. But where is a self-confidence that we carry? I remember when I dated for the first time, how much I wanted to impress. No, it's not. I said dated for the first time. How nervous I was. Because I want to put my best foot forward and to impress this woman that I'm dating. I wanted to impress her because I wanted to sound like I was funny and comedic. I wanted to impress her, to show her how great I was, how wonderful I am. Isn't that, after all, what dating's about? Is you want to impress. And then when you get married, you want to share your dirty stuff, all the stuff that you do that's, not so great. And then you hope they will marry you. Is that how it goes? For most of us, maybe. So then we do understand common good, then, don't we? We do understand that we want to, maybe not in dating, but other areas, especially when you're interviewing for a job. A lot of us, you've heard stories, how they clean up their resume. What is that? Well, it's common good. It's what we do to showcase ourselves, that we are better than we are. That is what Apostle Paul is saying, that we do very well at, is that we like to boost ourselves very much. And he's saying, because you like to boost yourself very much, know this: everyone likes to boost themselves very much, but you are called to not do that. You see the differentiation? If everyone in the church, at home, at your workplace, your family, your relatives, if everyone that you meet is trying to boost themselves up, then you are to put yourself down. Now you stick out like a sore thumb. For the manifestation of your spirit, the gift that you have, it's for their good. Are you supporting them by your common goodness? And the answer is maybe. Because in Matthew 25:14 says, "For it will be like a man going on a journey." And who is this man? Who is he talking about? Who called his servants? Who is he? Who is this guy who called his servants? And who are the servants? Entrusted to them his property. What is the property? First, who is the man? The man is Jesus. If he's going on a journey, where did he leave and where is he going? He left heaven to come here. This was his journey. He left his home. Earth was not his home. Earth was not his home. He left his home. Now the question that should enter into your mind is, I know Jesus. Why in the world would he leave this to come here? That's my question. Why would he leave the eternal place with God and come here? He called his servants. Are these angels? He called his angels together? No. He called his servants. Called here means kaleo. Means what? To invite or summon. He didn't call the angels, but he called the disciples, didn't he? He called them one by one, matter of fact. Did he not? He called every one of the 12, including the one that will betray him, which is interesting. That he knew his betrayer, and he called him anyway. He called every one of the 12, including the one that would betray him with a kiss, and another who would betray him 3 times. one who was a money changer, and the one who collected taxes. Think about that. The one who spit at the poor, and the one who wasn't poor himself. That's who he called. Can you find any kind of relational connection to these people? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a dirty dirtbag myself. I don't deserve to be in the presence of Jesus, the eternal Son of God who sat on the throne and came to earth, and he called him his servants. But lo, what he did, he entrusted to them his property. I would say he entrusted to them his trust. Property here means possession, but it also means his existence, his very existence. See, one of the reasons why I think our understanding of the talents falls apart is because these two verses do not make sense. And one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense, or it shouldn't make sense, is because in the English does not give us the type of impact that what Jesus is trying to say. And the impact is this. Number one, he called to them. And number two, he entrusted to them. And number three, he gave them his existence. What is his existence? What is that? What does that mean? Because it says property. Well, property in the first century and property now does not make sense. There's a disconnect. Because property, when you hear property, you think real estate. Property, in a sense, now, in contemporary word, means what you own. But in the first century, property, any property, was land. Not the house, the land. Nowadays, you buy the land to build a house. But then, it was the land. And in the first century, land was your life. Land was equivalent to your life. You gave up your land, you gave up your life. So you didn't just give up your land willy-nilly to anyone who came by, which makes the parable of the prodigal son even more marvelous, because it was the son who came to the father and said, I want the piece of my property. And in there, the property means bios. And so God, through Jesus' own words, gave up his life for the son. The son was saying to the father, I want you to die right now so that I can have my piece of the property. What son says that? In the first century, let alone now. Are any of you sons out here are that bold to go up to your father's face while he's yet living and say, Father, I want you to die so that I can have your inheritance? That's what the son was saying. But here, the son is saying, that word entrusted means to give up. It means to surrender. It means to deliver over. It means to abandon. Literally, it says this. The man going on a journey called his servants and abandoned them his trust. Abandoned who? God the Father delivered up his son to his servants to be taking care of the property. And if you think That doesn't make sense. Apostle Paul says differently. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. Romans chapter 8. He, that is God, did not spare his own son. What is Jesus saying? That Jesus is the man on a journey sent by his Father to be delivered up for the servants that he called, so that they will be entrusted with the property, his trust. What is his trust that he has entrusted to us? That he would deliver up his son to die on the cross. Because after all, he could have just done that without him dying. Right? Does that make sense? If you want to entrust to us your property, just give us your entrustment and I will take care of it. Well, no, it doesn't work that way, Christian. Because first, you need to be able to be entrusted. And in order to be entrusted in trust, you need to be called. And when you are called, then you can stand before the Father and say, I have been summoned by you. You can trust me. And when he calls you, the Son stands before you as the one delivered up for you, to you, in you. In you? Christian, when you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, who entered into your body? Jesus. His Spirit dwells in you. What is the object that he has entrusted to everyone who believes in Jesus? The Spirit of his Son dwells in you. Spirit of your Son dwells in you. And the reason why the Spirit of his Son dwells in you is because he delivered up his Son for you. In order for you to have that, there's no way you can have him unless he was delivered up for you. And there's no way you can have him unless you receive that he delivered up for you. And if you don't believe that he was delivered up for you, then you don't have him. If you don't have the Son, you don't have life. If you have life, you have the Son. The Son is everything, or the Son is nothing. And if he means everything, he means everything. The very existence of God dwelt in human flesh for you. For you. Why did he come to this miserable earth? To be delivered up for you. So that you could have him. So that you can have him and have him to the full. So then what does the 5 and the 2 and the 1 talents represent? It represents the amount of the entrustment that God has placed in each and every one of us. In that entrustment, then, everyone who believes in Jesus has a portion of the fullness of God. So that when the church comes together, you make one. You make one. That you're not supposed to stand alone. Why? Because you have a portion of God's existence. You have a portion of the very fullness of God in every single one of the believers. If you believe in Jesus, you have a portion of the fullness of God dwelt inside you physically. And when you are combined, you create the fullness of God in character in the church. There's a fullness of God when the church gather. I want to end with this. Sometimes we question why we come to church because we can do it at home and watch it on YouTube. We question why we have to do things in person and together, because after all, we can do things singly and individually. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because it's in this passage. Because each and every one of you, and me included, has the portion of the fullness of God. Do I have the fullness of God? No. But no individual person has the fullness of God either. When we come together, then the fullness of God maturates into the physical conglomeration that is the church. That is why your physical presence in the church is necessary. Necessary, I said it, necessary, not auxiliary, not accessory, necessary. You may not need it. You may say to yourself, I can do this by myself. My spiritual growth is so great. Have you looked at your common good brothers? Do they need you? Have you considered that they may need you? That they may need your presence? That they may need your word? That they may need your being there? Have you thought about that? Because if you didn't, then you should. And why is it that we don't think this way? Because, as I said, it is more natural for us not to. It is natural for you to not think this way. That's why Paul says, please, oh God, please do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of what? Mind. You have to think these thoughts. You have to believe these thoughts. You have to do these thoughts every day, that I am not a natural man in the Spirit of God. I am an unnatural man in the Spirit of God. God, oh God, forgive me for being so unnatural in the Spirit, that I want to be the man and the woman that you want me to be. To have the mind of God means to have thoughts of God, yes, but it also means to have the thoughts of the church in mind. For I am not an individual person in the church. For I am one part of the portion that God has blessed the church. And I am necessary. Because if I am not, then some aspect of the fullness of God is lost. And I want the fullness of God every Sunday and every time we meet together. And that's what we all should be thinking. It's not should I be there or not, or should I go there or not. It's the presence of myself is a portion of the fullness of God, and the fullness of God needs to be present. That should be our mindset, and that should be our thought. 4, why did he give up his son and spare him not for you and for me? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you asking you, begging you, that you help us. Help us, pray. For we are unnatural in the Spirit. And we need your guiding hand to help us with our mindset. Where the Apostle Paul did say, to no longer be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of mind. So may you renew minds. Renew minds, I pray. For you have given us the very presence of your Spirit to change those thoughts, to change those minds, to change our attitudes, to change our beliefs. Now, may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely. May your whole spirit, soul, and body get blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ.